Despite being designed in the 1970s, the A-10 attack aircraft still plays a crucial role in providing close air support for United States ground forces. Its power was demonstrated during the Gulf War in early 1991. The United States Air Force's A-10 squadron destroyed 987 tanks, 926 artillery pieces, 1,355 military vehicles, 10 grounded fighter jets, and 2 helicopters belonging to the Iraqi military. Meanwhile, Iraqi forces managed to shoot down only 5 A-10s. It is truly a fearsome weapon that strikes both fear and hatred in the hearts of its enemies. Contributing to the Warthog's impressive combat record is undoubtedly the GAU-8 Avenger cannon, considered the heart of the A-10. And that is exactly what we will discuss in this video. Stay tuned until the end to explore the legendary A-10's gun system, its development journey, and its combat stories. The birth of the tank killer. Built in the early 1970s and operational since 1977, its primary purpose was to destroy Cold War-era tanks and armor in Europe. The A-10 was an extremely important part of the United States calculations at the time. In September 1966, General John McConnell, Chief of Staff of the United States Air Force, ordered the development of a dedicated close air support aircraft. The Attack Experimental Program Office started working to create an aircraft built around the 30mm rotary cannon. The GAU-8 Avenger's development started alongside the A-10 competition. General Electric and Philco Ford got contracts to build competing prototype cannons in 1970. The Air Force asked manufacturers to select the smallest round that would defeat the hardest target. NATO concerns about Soviet forces at the Fulda Gap drove this development, where more than 1,500 Soviet tanks stood ready. Military experts found that there was a weak spot in Soviet tank design. They had to keep the top armor thin so tanks could work properly. A distinguished F-4 pilot, Colonel Bob Dilger, led the gun system development at the Air Force Armament Labs in 1966. His team wanted to exploit this weakness through top attack capabilities. Their studies showed what they needed. Each aircraft sortie had to achieve specific numbers of engagements, with exact firing times and round counts to take out targets. The original plan included tungsten penetrators. All the same, tungsten's high cost and limited supply, mostly from China and the Soviet Union, pushed them toward depleted uranium. DU projectiles came with a bonus: their fragments would catch fire after hitting the target. Engineers started the first live firing tests of the 30mm GAU-8 cannon in an A-10 during February 1974. Testing revealed several big problems that needed quick fixes. The cannon's muzzle flash would blind pilots during low, strafing runs. On top of that, it left dark soot on the front fuselage and windscreen, making it harder for pilots to see. Metal parts in the gun mounts would stick together after repeated firing. This didn't stop the gun from working or the plane from flying, but it made maintenance much harder. More problems came up when gas from firing would flow over the plane's wings and into the TF-34 turbofan engines, which could make them stop working. Engineers tried several fixes, including making the barrels longer to spread out the blast, using plastic instead of copper to bond ammunition, and testing 3 different ways to deflect gun gas. They landed on a solution that was simple yet clever. The system would keep restarting the engine's ignition whenever pilots pulled the trigger, so engines would start right back up if they stalled. The GAU-8 made up about 16% of the A-10's empty weight. The gun was so heavy that mechanics had to put a jack under the plane's tail during inspections to keep it from tipping backward. The Air Force tried to adapt the GAU-8 for other planes. They tested a 4-barrel version called the GAU-13A in an F-16 built for CAS in November 1988. This didn't work out because the mounting wasn't rigid enough. The vibrations were too strong, and faster speeds meant less time to aim. The project concluded with an incredibly accurate weapon. The GAU-8A hit 80% of its rounds within a 40-foot circle at 4,000 feet, achieving 5 milliradians accuracy. The projectile performed better than the M61 Vulcan II, taking 30% less time to reach 4,000 feet and dropping only about 10 feet over that distance. Inside the GAU-8 Avenger. You already know about the power of GAU-8, but to have such firepower, what is inside this gun and how does the gun make the tank and armored troops work? Don't leave the screen because we will talk about this right now. The GAU-8 Avenger, mounted slightly to the port side of the A-10 Thunderbolt II, represents a pinnacle of engineering precision. This hydraulically driven 7-barrel Gatling-style autocannon weighs 620 pounds by itself. The complete weapon system, including feed mechanisms and drum, weighs in at 4,029 pounds. The system's core consists of 3 main elements: the 7-barrel Gatling gun, hydraulic drive motors, and an ammunition drum. From muzzle to the rear of the ammunition system, the gun stretches an impressive 19 feet 5.5 inches. Each of the 90.5-inch long barrels contains its own breech bolt assembly. The gun's operation and ammunition feed run on twin hydraulic motors that generate 77 horsepower combined. A massive ammunition drum, 34.5 inches in diameter and 71.5 inches long, holds up to 1,174 rounds. This reliable design will give consistent performance even in intense combat situations. The GAU-8 operation follows a quick and simple process. Each barrel fires once during each gun revolution through its dedicated breech bolt assembly. By distributing firing loads across 7 barrels, this design substantially extends barrel life. The continuous rotary motion reduces impact on gun components, which increases reliability and longevity. The system's firing rate shows remarkable precision. After a half-second spin-up, it fires 50 rounds in the first second and 65 to 70 rounds per second after that. The gun's accuracy remains exceptional. 80% of its shots land within a 40-foot diameter circle from 4,000 feet during flight. The linkless feed system stands out as an innovative feature that reduces weight and minimizes jamming risks. The system keeps the aircraft's center of gravity stable by returning spent casings to the ammunition drum instead of ejecting them. The GAU-8 Avenger is equipped with a wide variety of ammunition, but 3 main types are available, including the PGU-13 high-explosive incendiary, designed to target personnel, trucks, and ammunition depots. This round has both fragmentation and incendiary effects. Next is the PGU-14 armor-piercing incendiary, which contains a depleted uranium penetrator core in a lightweight aluminum body, specifically designed to destroy tanks. There is also the PGU-15 target practice, which is primarily used for training, weapons testing, and aircraft systems validation. Each cartridge is 11.4 inches long and weighs about 1.53 pounds. The ammunition's design features several breakthrough innovations. Aluminum alloy cases replace traditional steel or brass, which boosts ammunition capacity by 30% for the same weight. Plastic driving bands in the projectiles help extend barrel life. Because it is equipped with such elixirs, the A-10 has become a nightmare for the enemy. But is that the only thing that makes the fighting forces afraid? Certainly not only that. And now, we will find out why tank crews fear this gun. Why tank crews fear this gun? Tank crews that face the A-10's GAU-8 Avenger must deal with a weapon system that specifically targets their weak points. The gun's reputation comes from its physical destruction and psychological deterrence through years of operations in the field. The GAU-8 ability to pierce armor changes with distance and attack angles. The depleted uranium rounds can cut through 76 millimeters of armor at 300 meters. This power drops to 69 millimeters at 600 meters, 64 millimeters at 800 meters, and 55 millimeters at 1,220 meters. Main battle tanks have their thickest armor on the front and sides, but remain exposed from above. A-10 pilots take advantage of this by diving steeply to target the thinner roof armor and engine areas. The gun puts 80% of its rounds inside a 40-foot circle at 4,000 feet. The GAU-8 can disable tanks even without piercing their armor by destroying vital external parts. Tests on M47 tanks showed the gun could wreck tracks, optics, and sensors. A single A-10 can make several passes and unleash up to 70 rounds per second on target areas. The psychological effects start before the first hit lands. Tank crews can't hear the aircraft that's a mile above them. They only hear a distinctive sound right before devastating impacts. This surprise makes the weapon even more terrifying. And if the anti-aircraft artillery cannot shoot down the A-10, the possibility of it becoming a target for the A-10 to counterattack is very high. Crews sealed inside their tanks with closed hatches feel intense stress during attacks. Research shows that staying in this defensive position reduces performance, especially with the constant threat of sudden death. The Gulf War proved how well the GAU-8 worked against armored vehicles. A-10s destroyed 23 tanks in one day. One pilot said that they quickly nailed 6 tanks, then started blasting away with their 30mm cannon and scored 2 more kills. Pilots described the gun's raw power vividly. The thing shook the airplane when you pulled the trigger. You could smell the spent casings even with the oxygen mask on. This feedback shows the massive force hitting targets below. Iraqi tank crews changed their habits after the A-10 attacks. They left their vehicles at night and slept far away to avoid nighttime encounters. This change shows how much they feared the A-10 and its main weapon. The GAU-8 success goes beyond destruction. Records show that in one battle, A-10 scored 93 hits on 6 tanks with 17 armor penetrations, an 18% penetration rate. Rounds that didn't go through still caused major damage to external components. Famous tank kills in combat. The A-10 Warthog's GAU-8 Avenger cannon has left an impressive mark in battles of all types. This formidable weapon system earned its reputation through successful missions in terrains ranging from desert warfare to mountain combat. The A-10 made its combat debut during Operation Desert Storm, with 132 aircraft taking part in the conflict. The numbers tell an impressive story. These aircraft destroyed 987 tanks, 926 artillery pieces, and 1,355 combat vehicles during the 40-day campaign. A standout mission took place on February 25, 1991, when 2 A-10 pilots took out 23 Iraqi tanks in just one day. They started their task before dawn near where Saudi Arabia, Iraq, and Kuwait meet. The pilots first knocked out 6 tanks with Maverick missiles and scored 2 more kills with the 30mm cannon. Captain Sheehy and Captain Johnston showed what the A-10 could do against different targets. They spotted artillery that threatened United States Marines moving toward Kuwait City and used infrared Maverick missiles to take out the threat. The infrared targeting system worked perfectly. The Iraqi weapons that had just fired showed up white-hot on their cockpit monitors. The A-10's reliability during the Gulf War was remarkable, with a mission-capable rate of 95.7%. The pilots even managed 2 air-to-air victories against Iraqi helicopters using the GAU-8 cannon. Captain Robert Swain scored the first such kill over Kuwait on February 6, 1991. A-10s joined Operation Enduring Freedom in March 2002 after the September 11 attacks. They flew from bases in Pakistan and Afghanistan and supported Operation Anaconda, which showed how well these aircraft adapted to new combat zones. The A-10s came back to Afghanistan in 2018 with a new mission, setting up at Kandahar Airfield to help United States advisors who worked closer to the front lines. This time, they focused on hitting Taliban revenue sources, especially their drug production facilities. These aircraft excelled at precision strikes during these operations. They worked with F-22s, F-16s, B-52s, and other aircraft to deliver powerful strikes against Taliban targets. Their skill at operating from forward air bases and staying in the air longer made them excellent at providing close air support below 1,000 feet. Tests conducted in February 2022 confirmed that the A-10 still packs a punch against modern armor. The Air Force ran groundbreaking trials where A-10 CTKs successfully hit up-armored surrogate main battle tanks equipped with explosive reactive armor. The results proved that even today's armored vehicles can't withstand the A-10 CTKs firepower. A single A-10 uses about 120 rounds in a typical gun run, which lets it hit 9 to 10 targets before running out of ammo. When flying together, A-10s can take out almost 40 armored vehicles using their 30mm rounds. This massive firepower and the ability to operate in rough conditions make it a crucial asset in today's military operations. Pilot stories from the cockpit. Have you ever thought about the differences between soldiers in the sky and soldiers on the ground, especially in war? They are trained differently, their missions are different, and war is seen differently through their eyes. But one thing is for sure, their stories of war are always worth listening to. We are talking about the A-10 Warthog, so it makes sense to talk about the pilot's stories from the cockpit. A-10 Warthog pilots have seen some of the most intense combat missions in modern military history. Their stories reveal the raw power of the GAU-8 cannon and the aircraft's remarkable toughness in battle. Captain Todd Shanghai Sheehy's first combat mission showed the challenges A-10 pilots faced. He made his way through complete darkness with malfunctioning nosewheel steering as the base came under attack. The night sky filled with countless strobe lights from coalition aircraft that blended with stars, creating an ethereal scene of fighters racing northward to meet enemy forces. Lieutenant Colonel Mike Hilkert's first taste of combat was just as challenging. He coordinated 21 aircraft over a 6-hour battle and repeatedly positioned his A-10 to draw enemy fire away from rescue helicopters. His actions saved more than 30 soldiers and airmen, earning him the Distinguished Flying Cross. Lieutenant Colonel Kim Campbell's 2003 mission over Baghdad stands among the most remarkable combat stories. Her A-10 took a direct hit from a surface-to-air missile after delivering close air support to ground forces. "I didn't see the missile coming. My flight leader didn't see the missile coming. My first indication was when it impacted my aircraft," Campbell recounted. The missile left hundreds of holes in the fuselage and damaged her flight control systems. Campbell switched to manual reversion mode for the grueling 300-mile return flight. She described it as mentally and physically exhausting, comparing it to driving a dump truck without power steering. The aircraft began rolling left during the final approach, yet she pulled off one of her finest landings. Operation Anaconda in March 2002 highlighted the A-10's precision in mountain warfare. Colonel Haddon faced a complex battlefield where tracer fire crisscrossed the valley between friendly and enemy positions. His team identified and eliminated Taliban artillery positions and troop concentrations through careful coordination with ground controllers and onboard sensors. Karl Marx, the highest-time A-10 pilot, amassed an impressive combat record throughout his career, logging 1,161 combat hours across 358 combat sorties. He engaged in 48 troops-in-contact situations, expending 39,340 rounds of 30 lieutenant colonel ammunition, dropping nearly 350 bombs, and firing 59 Maverick missiles. Captain Gregory Thornton showed the GAU-8 effectiveness against armored targets during the 2003 Iraq invasion. He braved intense anti-aircraft fire and poor weather conditions, closing within 3,000 feet of enemy forces to engage his targets. His aggressive attacks cleared a path for the 3rd Infantry Division's advance toward Baghdad. 2 A-10 pilots took on a dramatic rescue mission in Afghanistan to protect 6 Special Operations Marines surrounded by Taliban fighters. They flew 300 miles to reach the engagement zone and kept providing fire support for 4 hours. Their actions eliminated dozens of insurgents and earned them the Distinguished Flying Cross with Valor. Colonel Kim Campbell, nicknamed Killer Chick, broke through gender barriers in her 24-year career. She logged 1,800 flight hours and completed more than 100 combat missions in Iraq and Afghanistan. Her drive for excellence started in middle school when she refused to accept being good enough for a girl. These combat experiences show how A-10 pilots value the aircraft's extended loiter times. This feature lets them build detailed situational awareness. Multiple radio channels let them talk simultaneously with wingmen, joint terminal attack controllers, and other key contacts. The combination of endurance and continuous connection makes the A-10 a unique platform for close air support missions. Do you know any other stories about pilots who flew A-10s? If so, please share them with us and everyone in the comments. And to finish today's video, let's talk about the impact of the GAU-8 gun on tank warfare. How the gun changed tank warfare. The A-10 Warthog's GAU-8 Avenger changed tank warfare tactics and design philosophies completely. Tests at the Nevada Test and Training Range showed modern tanks with advanced protective systems still can't withstand this powerful weapon. Military strategists created new countermeasures when they realized the GAU-8 threat. Electronic warfare units went through a reorganization to curb aerial threats. They positioned UAVs behind front lines among jamming guidance systems to boost protection. Tank formations changed their deployment patterns primarily due to the GAU-8 ability to rapidly target multiple vehicles, its effectiveness against top armor, and the psychological impact of its distinctive sound. Today's tank units use drone suppressors that work up to 1,000 meters. Military analysts looked at video footage and examined targets closely. They learned a single A-10 sortie could disable multiple tanks. The Air Force showed this capability through groundbreaking testing. A-10C pairs successfully targeted surrogate main battle tanks with armor-piercing incendiary rounds. A typical A-10 gun run uses 120 rounds, which lets pilots target 9 to 10 tanks before running out of ammunition. The GAU-8 effectiveness led to major changes in tank protection systems. Engineers made unmanned turrets their priority, which changed tank design philosophy. This change serves 2 vital purposes. It enhances crew safety by reducing the risk when ammunition strikes the turret and makes tanks harder to detect by maintaining a lower, flatter profile. Tank designers added more protection against threats from above. They tested explosive reactive armor, originally made to stop explosive warhead weapons, against the GAU-8 armor-piercing capabilities. Explosive reactive armor didn't work well enough against the Avenger's high-velocity rounds. Old ammunition creates an unexpected challenge for tank designers. By 2018, A-10 bullets were 32 years old on average. the Air Force started learning about alternative materials and thought over tungsten to replace depleted uranium. Tungsten's lower density might not work as well against modern tank armor. Tank design keeps changing as engineers try to counter the A-10's capabilities. They use artificial intelligence and advanced materials science to boost protection systems. They also focus on unmanned turret designs because traditional armor setups remain weak against attacks from above. Field tests prove the GAU-8 still works against modern armor. A-10 pilots consistently caused critical damage to heavily armored targets from various angles and directions. This lasting threat shapes modern tank design and pushes engineers toward trailblazing solutions beyond standard armor systems. Thank you for coming to the end of the video. Besides being equipped with the giant GAU-8 Avenger machine gun that turns the A-10 into a destroying machine, what else do you appreciate about the A-10? And in your opinion, what are the reasons why the A-10 is still used by the United States Air Force until now? Or share your views in the comments section. See you in the next video.